So some of the projects we worked on in 2020 for the upcoming season this year on the property were mostly based around food. We did a lot of trimming for apple trees, cleared out some areas for food plots, added some standing corn, some standing grain, and just kind of worked on that aspect of it. We're waiting for the loggers to still come in this next season, clean the timber out a little bit, but for the most part, we focused on food and tried to just draw more deer into the property in 2020.
So going into the 2020 season, we're really intrigued in figuring out the little steps we did put into it in 19, what effects would those have on the deer, seeing if it would lend itself to letting more bigger bucks move into the area. What we kind of found out is there's a few deer out there that have some good promise to them, but what we really realized is there's probably a few more years and definitely a lot more work that we need to put into this over the next upcoming years before we truly get those age class deer that we're really after and what we really want for our long-term strategy hunting out there. It's going to take some time to get it to where we actually want it to be.
So heading into the 2020 season, goals on the property, really harvest a mature buck and try to get the age structure up on the buck side of things. So knowing we had a couple deer that were kind of on the fringe there at 5.5 years old, I thought to myself, we got 3 people hunting here, myself, my dad, my brother, 3 tags. If we don't even have 3 mature bucks that we're looking to harvest, maybe we should kind of back off it a little bit. And I kind of focused my efforts elsewhere. I know in Wisconsin, I got a buck on camera I've been chasing for quite a while. He's 8.5-year-old buck. That was a big target of mine this season. And then in Minnesota, I actually kind of wanted to just leave the property alone, try to let some bucks survive, and I put some of my efforts into a property I got permission on that has a little bit better age structure right now, and I hunted that more frequent early season, knowing that there really wasn't anything on the property that I was looking to harvest this season. So a lot of my efforts went elsewhere, just trying to get this age structure up, and hopefully my dad or brother could get a shot at one of these potential shooters on the property this year. So to kind of paint the picture what we're looking for with this property long term, a good example is the Wisconsin buck that I shot this season, 8.5-year-old buck. And as we progress through the years, we can go through footage here of him at 3.5 years old, 4.5 years old, 5.5 years old, 6.5, 7.5, then finally 8.5. This is the progression that you get. And this buck is not upper end, awesome genetic buck by any means, but you give deer age and they can turn into something really special. So, as we're working on the Whitetails from scratch property, we see these deer go from 3, they make a big jump at 4. We want to see them get to 5, 6 years old, and it's tough because, there's a lot of pressure around there, and, all they have to do is stray after a hot doe, and they're gone. But the goal really is to get these upper end bucks, continuously work on the property to let them survive and let them grow, and sometimes no pressure on the property, no hunting pressure is kind of the key to success. So a lot of times we just stay out, back out, and hunt real low key. There were a few things that happened this season that weren't ideal, especially during the hunting season. We had some projects that go on, and this is just part of the process. These first few years we got a lot of work to do. We're going to bump some deer around. We're going to make a lot of noise, as they say, and really disrupt the area. So one of them was a driveway that went in on the south side of Cedar Springs. Big project, took place in September. Not ideal, obviously. We tried to get it done in June or July. As you can see, we've got some pretty heavy work going on right now. We've got a road going up to the back of the property here, and obviously it's going to affect the deer quite a bit. So it's middle of October, putting out a couple more wireless cameras and just trying to keep tabs on the deer. Hopefully we finish up this road here in the next week or so, and then pretty much give the deer the property for the rest of the year. We had that. We took down barns at the old farmhouse, removed foundations, took down a lot of sheds and things like that, had to burn all the wood. A lot of activity going around by the farm too. So the whole south side of both properties really was pushing deer north. So some of these big projects we implemented this season, not ideal for short term, especially on the hunting side of things. But long term, you have to get that foundation in place. Now it's in place and now we can work from it. So not ideal on the short term, but in the long run, it's really going to pay off because now we have access to areas of the property that we never had access with vehicles before. So as the season progresses, we got 3 really core deer that show back up, and we're ready for them. I mean, we got them on camera last year, and we're just waiting for them to really come into the property this season. And one of them we call Zipper. Last year he had an arrow wound through one of his back legs, so he kind of limped around a little bit and he had a big cut, so we called him Zipper. He was a 4-year-old buck this year, and when he showed up he looked really nice. We got him in velvet a little bit, which was cool. And then as he shed and went hard horn, we got him sparring with some other bucks and really kind of taking the area over. Great 4-year-old buck, and it's a buck we would have liked to get one more year, but unfortunately he got shot. And really there were only maybe 1 or 2 target bucks we were going to go after, and one was Blind 10, a buck we have a lot of history with, a core buck, a home body buck. We got sheds of him from even before we bought any property as a 2-year-old. And then we picked up his 3-year-old shed, which we did an episode on. And then this last season as a 4-year-old, we did not pick up his sheds. He left for a different food source. So we knew coming into the season he'd be a 5-year-old buck. That's kind of the range we're looking at. Doesn't happen every day you get 5, 6, plus year old bucks, but that's really what we're looking for here. Whitetails from scratch. He was a buck we were looking to harvest this year if we could get an arrow into him.
Of all the deer that were on the property, and there were some really nice ones, my target buck wasn't the biggest buck, it wasn't the best genetic buck, it wasn't the most awesome buck, it was Blind 10. It was a buck that was kind of a bully buck, and it meant something to me because I found his sheds the first year we got the land in the winter, we're walking through, and his genetics weren't fantastic, but he was enough age class deer where I knew he wasn't going to go anywhere, and I knew there was younger deer than him that were going to go somewhere big. He was my target. So my focus is Blind 10 for this year, and I'm looking at all the data, I'm looking at all the intel on the cameras, kind of seeing what Blind 10 was doing, trying to figure out his behaviors, trying to figure out his patterns. And this year, I got back into my element, and that's the experience that really took me to a different place this year. So as the year goes on, I'm focused on getting this deer. I'm seeing a whole bunch of other bucks, and it didn't happen. Okay, he just didn't show up, and the opportunity didn't happen during my windows, but something even bigger happened right about that time. There was a piece of bordering property, 80 acres, that we've had our eye on if we ever had an opportunity to get it. I mean, we're only going to get one chance at this, and it's only going to be once in a lifetime chance. And it happened. I mean, it literally happened within a week. It happened so quick and so fast that we actually turned that land over and had a purchase agreement in place within a week, a few days before the gun hunting season started. And so now everything's changing. Now we have all this anxiety about this heavily pressured, heavily hunted area that we just picked up. Things changed significantly.
This season we had another opportunity which was actually kind of took us off guard by surprise. The property to the north that borders quite a bit of Oak Roost and Cedar Springs actually came up for sale. We ended up purchasing that, but it was right in the middle of the season, right before gun season. So it's going to be a really big piece right here. It's going to fit in great with what we have habitat-wise. There's a big pond, some CRP. Now we have some bigger ag fields. We never had any ag before, so there's a big asset there. And it ties in really well to what we have going on right now. So that happened middle of the season. It did bump the deer around a little bit, that whole process, that transition with that property, but looking forward, it's a great fit to what we have going on. Once in a lifetime opportunity. Properties just don't get sold every day. So we're excited about it. I think it's going to be great long term, and we just have to, we're just trying to get our minds wrapped around what this new process looks like, because for the past year or two we've really had something in mind that we're going to do to the property, habitat management wise and structure wise. That all changes now. So big change this season. We're excited about it and looking forward to this next spring getting after it.
So now we've secured this extra property, which is just, we're on cloud 9. It was mind-blowing what was going on there. And we're just giddy. And so because we never go into this land, we do these little things called the creep. So I went for a little cruise down the gravel road there and came to the corner and just started turning the corner, and I look up, Blind 10 standing right there staring at me. He's maybe 150 yards away, right on the horizon, looking directly at my truck. I'm looking directly at him. I'm going, oh man! And so I back out, and instead of him going down, there's a horse pasture in this new property that we literally just closed on. And he stayed on the outside of that property, drifted down into the creek area on the other side of our adjoining property, popped up on the neighbor's land who was sitting there hunting in the blind, and he got him. And it was just a mixed emotion went through my head, like, oh my God, it's like a grieving process. And then all of a sudden my head cleared, and it's like, you know what? This is best case scenario. We needed that deer out of there, okay? A kid shot his first deer of a lifetime for him for quite a while, I'm sure. And it's a good thing. I learned how the property works now. I learned how the deer flow works. And now there's room for these other deer to come in, some of these younger deer to actually mature. And once we get this management plan in place, we're going to be better off because of that actual incident. So there's a little twist to this story. What we didn't know is the bucks that were traveling with blind 10. One of them was a buck that we call Chickenfoot.
A really nice buck, one we call Chickenfoot. Big split G2s on him. And last year he had big split G2s with a little kicker, which made it more of a Chickenfoot looking side. And then this year he came back. Didn't really grow much on the frame perspective, on the frame size, but put a lot of mass on. Big splits on his twos. And a lot of daylight video. He really loved the property, loved what we did. Hanging out in the food sources, hanging out in the hinge cuts, following the valleys and doing all the stuff we want him to do with the habitat. But again, gun season here in Minnesota is during the rut.
And Chickenfoot was right there in that area. And I'm sure when that gun went off, it bumped Chickenfoot. And it bumped Chickenfoot off of all of our properties out into no man's land in this heavy wind in the middle of open country. And there just happened to be a gun hunter and got a shot at Chickenfoot, took him out, which was the deer we really, really wanted to make it because his potential was really good. So that's 2 deer down in one stroke. And so when we see those deer go, it's really, really a bummer. All of a sudden, 10 of these 12 to 14 deer that we wanted to make it or were on our target list, gone. Gone in 2 weeks, gone. And I realized at that point, it was the perfect storm this year. There was the breeding season was right during the core of the rut of the gun season. The weather was nice, so the hunters stayed out. The wind came, took away their senses, and people are getting to be better hunters. And I promise you, people are watching what's out there. They're watching Deer Society. They're using these products. People are becoming more successful as a whole and a little more serious because they're learning more. And then like a light went off in my head. It's like, that's been your goal. That's been your goal the whole time. And the mission statement of Illusions, ever since I started this, was to create products and information that's going to help someone become more successful, period. That's it. That's what we do. That's always been my goal. And so after I got through that emotional roller coaster and then I came to that realization, it's like, it's going to make things so much better now. So my mindset has changed. I've grown, I've learned, and even though I don't have one on the wall this year, I didn't get my target buck, this is the most successful and fulfilling season I've ever had.
So 2020 season has closed. A couple of the big mature bucks on the property are now gone, so we've created some room for new deer, and it's all about habitat now. We do have a good crop of young bucks coming in. Got some 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and even some 4-year-olds right now. A good handful of them that we're gonna create better habitat for, try to draw in even more deer with better habitat, and just try to start that process again, grow those deer, try to get them 5, 6, 7 years old. And again, wild whitetails, there's no high fences here. It's not some big operation. We're working with neighbors. They're free range, they're running around getting shots. So it's a scenario that can't be controlled 100%. We're just doing our best with what we have, and we're really excited. We think we got all the pieces of the puzzle in place, and it's going to be long-term a really good property, and we're going to have a lot of success.
I'm excited to get back out there and put in that sweat equity and really get this place set up just to gain that fulfillment and finally growing some mature deer that we will be very happy to harvest here in the future.
You know, you look long-term, you look at the big plan, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, we have hardly any ag, we don't have internal water holes, we haven't done any timber harvest, we don't have our access trails in place. So big picture, we're probably at 10-15% of actually getting the property where it needs to be, and that's an exciting process in itself. And I think it just shows that even the results we've had so far, it's just going to be a great product in the end, and we're just excited year by year. We're going to just keep seeing more big bucks, and the results are going to show. A lot of ups and downs. You got to be really patient and just keep putting in the work, and we're going to try to show you how that process works on this property and some of the things we run into and learn from each season, including this year. With what we have going on with an addition to the property, all the habitat improvements we have in place coming into this next season, we're just really excited for what's to come, and we still got a couple pretty good bucks up our sleeve.
We had deer survive that were on that list that we wanted to survive. They're still there. And if they can make it to that 6, 7, 8-year-old, it's going to be incredible.